Hello, everyone. This is the 249th episode of Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles on the Soccer Nostalgia blog. For this episode, I welcome back distinguished professor Dr. Laurent Bellaiche of University of Arkansas as we discuss the France national team under Michel Hidalgo. This is the part one that covers from 1976 to 1978 World Cup. Dr. Ballaiche is also a professor at Tel Aviv University, and he has designed a new class called Thinking Outside of the Box, a course that involves science and football. Welcome back, Laurent.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be part of this wonderful podcast.
Thank you, Laurent. So let's go back in time. What was the state of French football culture as well as its national team as we come to the mid 1970s?
It was extremely bad. In fact, I will say a disaster, perhaps the worst period of French soccer history. So in 1958, France goes to the semi-final of a World Cup and was defeated by the Brazil of Pelé, Garrincha and Vava, and we finished third in this World Cup. In 1960, it was European competition in France, and France also went to semi-final, finished fourth. But from 1960 to 1976, really extremely bad. Not a single qualification for European competition. Not a single qualification for the World Cup, except 1966 in England, where French finished last of this group after a draw with Mexico, 1-1, a loss against Uruguay, 2-1, and a loss against the home team of England, 2-0. So really quite bad. And in fact, it was so bad that in 1968, there was a game at home for the qualification of the World Cup of 1970, and it was against Norway, which at that time was a very weak team, and France succeeded to lose at home. It was in Strasbourg, 1-0. So it was really at the bottom of the level of France all over its history.
France were being managed by the successful Romanian manager, the former Romanian manager of Ajax, nicknamed Tonton, Stefan Kovacs. And he left his post as France national team manager at the end of 1975 after France were eliminated from the 1976 Euro qualifiers in a group with Belgium and East Germany. So what was the atmosphere of French football at national team level as well as its backbone at this point?
Yeah, so this is a very good point. I mean, Stefan Kovacs was very successful when he joined the French national team. As you say, he was coaching Ajax, and with Ajax, he won two European competitions in 1972 against Inter Milan with 2 goals of Johan Cruyff. And then the year after, 1-0 against Juventus, another Italian team, with 1 goal of Rep. And he also won with Ajax the Intercontinental Cup in 1972. There, and he had phenomenal players: Cruyff, Rep, Neskin, Surbier, Hahn, Pete Kaiser, a little bit forgotten this day, and the one that was nicknamed Mr. Ajax, which is Jacques Swart. And he was known to be a nice coach, not like a Rinus Michels to be a kind of dictator, but very welcoming and very kind and humble towards his players.
On that point, his nickname of Tonton, that's an affectionate way of saying uncle in French, I believe, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Indeed. He's really someone you are very close and you have a lot of affection towards. And when he joined the French national team, it's taking over Georges Boulogne, the coach before him. But it was not a success. In fact, he coached 15 times French with 6 wins, but 4 draws and 5 losses. We didn't qualify to the 1976 Euro under his guidance. But he did a couple of nice things. He started a lot of new players, like 33 new players, including Rocheteau, the Green Angel. And Rocheteau just played a couple of times for Saint-Etienne before he was called to the French national team. Alain Giresse also started under his guidance, Christian Lopez and Bernard Lacombe as well. I think so far is the only foreigners who have coached the French national team. There was a guy named George Kimpton in 1934, but he was an advisor rather than the coach there. And if you look at his team, for example, his last game was in November 1975 against Belgium. This is what team he chose. Baratelli as goalkeeper, he's a good goalkeeper. In defense, there was Bracci, a good, solid defender. Oladucci is the first player from Corsica to have been called to the national team. There was Monument, one of my favorite players of all time, Marius Trésor in defense. Fantastic player. Roman Domenech on the left side, just very tough player who will become coach of a national team later on. For example, he was the coach that brought France to the World Cup final of 2006. In midfield, it was a good midfield. Jean-Marc Guillou, Huck, Jean-Noël Huck, and Henri Michel was the captain. And if you look at the forward, Rocheteau on the right side, Christian Kos is okay as a center forward, and Albert Raymond on the left side. The sub were Jean Galis and Jean-Michel Larquet, so it's a good team. He also called over people like Beretta quite often, Jean-Pierre Adams, and when Adams and Trésor was playing, this was nicknamed the Black Guard, very solid central defense. Bernard Lacombe, as we say, Bertrand de Man as goalkeeper was also called quite often. There is a player that he called, his name is Serge Chiesa.
Oh, yes, yes.
He's a jewel. His nickname was the Little Mozart. For example, the first game under Kovacs was against Greece, and Chiesa was called, he scored a goal. But in '74, he decided not to play anymore for the French team.
And that was a big scandal at the time, that he refused selection.
Absolutely. Say he wants to stay with family, he doesn't want to spend so many times outside. It was a big scandal. On top of it, it was before a very important game against East Germany, if I will remember. But he didn't want to play. And this was a problem. You know, one dream of Michel Hidalgo that will take over was to team up Michel Platini and Serge Chiesa. It didn't happen. Michel Hidalgo succeeded to team up Alain Giresse and Platini. It was a big success. But the real dream of Michel Hidalgo was Michel Platini and Serge Chiesa. But Serge Chiesa refused to be called to play for the French national team there. So he had some good players, except from Serge Chiesa and perhaps Rocheteau and Marius Trésor, not superstar, but the team was not doing so well.
Stefan Kovacs' assistant, Michel Hidalgo, was appointed to lead the team for the year 1976 in line for the 1978 World Cup qualifiers. What was the reaction to his appointment?
So Michel Hidalgo was first a soccer player and quite successful. For instance, he played for Reims from 1954 to 1957, meaning that he played the final of the European Cup in 1956 against Real Madrid. And in fact, he scored a goal. When he scored, it was 3-2 for Reims against Real Madrid. And then Real Madrid came back and won 4-3. And then went to Monaco for quite some time. And in fact, he was among the team that won the first two cups and the first two French championships for Monaco. And really is well liked because he's very humble, he's very kind, not the person that will say bad things towards people. As a coach, he started to coach basically the youth team of Monaco. Then he went to Menton, a small team there. And then he went to play some part in the national team there. And I think it was probably in 1972 that he was appointed assistant coach of first Georges Boulogne. And when Kovacs came, he continued to be assistant coach. So we didn't know what to expect.
Would you say there were reservations because he didn't have any top flight managerial experience?
Yes, I would say exactly. There was some reservation. On the other hand, we knew he was a good player. We knew he was kind. And so, you know, we took for the first time a foreigner as a national coach, someone who won title with Ajax, but still cannot do anything with French team. So let's give him a try and we'll see what happens. And at the end, he coached 75 times France and he is extremely well beloved.
And his stated objective was the 1978 World Cup, bearing in mind that France had missed out in the 1970 and 1974 tournaments. Mm-hmm. Big challenge. In his very first match in charge on March 27th, 1976, Michel Hidalgo gave debuts to three of his regulars into the next decade, a certain Michel Platini, Maxime Bossis, and Didier Six. There was some satisfaction for this match as Platini scored on his debut on an indirect free kick, and France dominated for an hour or so before Czechoslovakia came back into the game, and the match ended as a 2-2 tie. Bearing in mind this Czechoslovakia team would become European champions in 2-3 months' time. So, what was the main takeaway from his debut as a manager?
It was pretty good because we are talking about the Czechoslovakia team that will, a couple of months later, become European champion. 1976, winning against West Germany in penalty kicks with the famous penalty of Panenka. And if you look at this team, the goalie is Ivo Victor, who finished third in the Golden Ball competition in 1976. In defense, you have Andrus, who is a very good central defender. You have Nehoda as forward. And it's interesting, both Andrus and Nehoda, then in the 1980s, they went to play in second division in France in a small teams. And you had also Masny, that Kevin Keegan considered one of the best wingers of that time.
Yes.
Really excellent player. And first goal from Soler started well at the 17th minute. Then there is this indirect free kick, which is very interesting because so it is indirect. Someone has to touch the ball before someone else kick. And Michel Platini was 20 years old at that time. And there's the captain, Henri Michel, and Michel Platini told him, Henri Michel was probably 28 at that time, give me the ball, pass me the ball, and I will score. It's his debut at 20 years old in front of an idol like Henri Michel. And this is exactly what happened. And it's the first of his 10 or 11 free kicks that he scored for the French team, which is still the record to that day. Then the Czech came back and 2-2. But it was good. It was good in the sense that there are some good young players, Platini and Bossis. There were also 5 players from Nantes that Michel Hidalgo put in there, and say, if we can avoid losing against a strong team like Czechoslovakia, this can be promising for the years to come.
Yes, and of course, Platini and Hidalgo's destinies were interlinked as he would be the main player of his tenure and the star of the team and one of the greatest players in the history of the game and of course in Europe at that time during those 8 years of Hidalgo's reign. Also, 3 days before this match against Czechoslovakia, Platini was actually in Bucharest with the French Olympic team and earning qualification for the Montreal Olympics. So his star was on the rise, Platini. And there was an era of renaissance with Saint-Étienne's run in Europe that we discussed in our previous discussion, along with the revelation of Platini and the progress of the under-23 side that would form the backbone of this new French side. Now, in our previous discussion on Saint-Étienne, I mentioned that when he was asked about it, whether France's renewal was linked to him, Platini immediately said that it was actually Saint-Étienne's run that was more important in the rebirth rather than his debut.
I will say that it's more than that it looked like all the planets were aligned in the sense that Saint-Étienne was doing very well. 75 a semi-final of European competition, 76 final. Platini was a rising star, but you also have to notice that Michel Hidalgo was going to show that he's a great coach. And there were Nantes also that was there and really contributed to the French team becoming better and better. Like I say, for example, for the first game against Czechoslovakia, there were 5 players from Nantes: Bertrand de Man, Bossis, Rio, Henri Michel, and Rampillon. So it was a sum of different things, all working well together.
France were in a World Cup qualifying group with Bulgaria and Republic of Ireland. France would start its World Cup qualifiers against Bulgaria in Sofia in a very controversial match in the fall of 1976 and ended it in November 1977 in Paris after defeating Bulgaria with Michel Hidalgo being carried on the players' shoulders, celebrating. Can you walk us through these qualifiers?
Yeah, it was a very exciting time. So it was, as you say, the first game is Bulgaria-France in Sofia. It was a 2-2, but France was leading 2-0, thanks to Platini via indirect kick again, and then Bernard Lacombe scoring the second goal. And then there was a referee who was absolutely terrible. His name is Ian Foote. And in
fact, the Scottish referee, yes.
It was really so bad that at one point he gave a penalty for Bulgaria. It was 2-2. There was a French TV commentator, Thierry Roland, said on national TV, well, I'm really not afraid to say it, Mr. Foote, you are a bastard on TV. There are no other words. And he continued to rant by saying what a scandal this referee is. I never seen anyone like him. He should be in prison, not on the football field. And thanks to that, he became even more popular among the French fans. And what was interesting is the Bulgarian player was Bonev missed it. So it's 2-2, so some promise. And then it's the next games against Republic of Ireland in Paris in November 76. It's a good Irish team. David O'Leary in defense, Liam Brady in midfield with Johnny Giles, who is also the manager. There in midfield as well. And as forward, Stapleton and Steve Highway, and France win 1-0, Platini and Batney. There was also a player that I like, and he only played twice for the French national team, is Keruzore, who is considered one of the best players from Brittany. After that, it was the game in Ireland, in Dublin, and then France lost 1-0, a goal from Liam Brady, and then it's the last game. It's Bulgaria at home, and November 77, and France has to win because Bulgaria is ahead by 1 point, 4 points, and France-Ireland 3 points. And then Hidalgo choose the following team: André Reyes goalie, Janvion, Rio, Trésor, Bossis in defense, Guillou, Batney, Platini in midfield, Rocheteau on the right side of the attack, and Lacombe in 6. This is his favorite forward line. First goal by Rocheteau, 38 minutes. Then Platini score 2-0. Then Setkov put a goal for Bulgaria at the 85 minutes, so very worried because if it's a draw, Bulgaria qualified. But the sub Christian Dalgier scored, and it was 3-1, and French qualified for the first time to the World Cup since 1936. And as you said, Michel Hidalgo was carried over the shoulders of a French player. The stadium was, Parc des Princes was so happy, and French fans were so happy. Great moment of French soccer history.
In terms of friendlies in 1977, France defeated West Germany 1-0 in Franz Beckenbauer's last ever international, and then embarked on a tour of South America, along with many other European nations, facing Argentina and Brazil. There's a 2-2 match against Brazil that they were losing and then came back. Of course, the match against Argentina ended as scoreless. What were the lessons learned in these test matches?
I think these were very important games in French history. For example, the France-West Germany in Paris, it's a win 1-0. But you have to realize at that time, as we indicated, France was quite bad. But West Germany, it was unbelievable. Semi-finalists of the 1970 World Cup, then win the Euro in 1972, then win the World Cup in 1974, then finalists of Euro in 1976. So it's a powerhouse. And even the team. Bayern has won 3 European competitions. Borussia Mönchengladbach has won the 1975 UEFA Cup. That year, Hamburg will win the 1977 C2. Later on, Frankfurt won in 1980. So it's an incredibly powerful nation. And the team that Germany aligned in Parc des Princes that year is unbelievable. The goalie, Sepp Maier, one of the best ever. Right defense, Bertie Vogts, who completely guarded well Johan Cruyff at the 1974 final of the World Cup. Nogli from Hamburg, Beckenbauer, 2 times Golden Ball winner. Dietz, probably the best player of Duisburg ever. Midfield, Bonhoff and Stilicke, both from Mönchengladbach at that time. Flohe is an artist playing for Cologne. Rummenigge, as a forward, will also win twice the Golden Ball. And Dieter Müller was the best top scorer of the 1976 Euro. On the left side, Holzenbein will win the UEFA Cup with Frankfurt in 1980. It's probably one of the best also player of all time from Frankfurt. And there also Eric Beer that came, also one of the best players, but for Hertha Berlin. And what did Michel Hidalgo do against this powerful team? He selected some players from Saint-Etienne, like Lopez, Janvion, Batney, Sinigel, and Patrick Revelli was a sub. And they have the revenge because they lost against Bayern with Saint-Etienne in the 1976 European Cup final. He put several players from Nantes again, Rio, who played the mask that game because of his broken nose, Omar Sanoun, Loïc Amis, 1 player from Lyon, Bernard Lacombe, and 2 from Nancy, Michel Platini and Rouillet. But what he did, for me, this is absolutely unbelievable. He took 3 players from a small team, Metz, and it's the first time ever that they will play for the French national team. There is the goalie André Rey, and there is Patrick Battiston, that was at Metz at that time, and there was Bernard Zenier that will come into. I mean, who in this right mind takes some players from the small team to play the first time against this super powerful team that was West Germany? Unbelievably, France won 1-0 thanks to a goal of Rouillet. So this was an incredibly achievement. Michel Hidalgo, after that, was interviewed just after the game, very humble, but he said something interesting. He said, you know, we play well, and if we can win against a team like West Germany, I think that we have no limit. We can really start to win more and more, and perhaps later on some competition if everything goes well. I think this France-West Germany of 1977 is extremely important time in the French soccer history. This is where people begin to wonder, ooh, how come we are so bad and now we can win against teams like West Germany? After that, there was another friendly against Switzerland, in Switzerland, and it's 4-0 for France, so it did very well. What is important on a historical point of view, this is the first time that Alain Giresse and Platini were playing together. So Michel Hidalgo called back Giresse that didn't play for the French team since 1974. Then that same year, as you say, there was the 0-0 in Argentina. On top of that, Amis hit the post there. Interesting, there were 6 players from Nantes in that game. And there was Zimaco, who came into the game as a sub. And it was June 26, 1977. And this is considered as a selection for Bastia because he was still under contract with Bastia before moving to Saint-Etienne. He was still under contract for 4 days only. And he's the first player from New Caledonia to ever play for France. Then there is this 2-2 in Maracana. First time that France played in Maracana. France was losing 2-0. Then Didier Six scored an excellent goal, and Marius Trésor scored a header that was, we had the feeling that he was flying in the air when he scored. So this was a great achievement, and it was June 30. It was the last day of contract of Zimaco with Bastia, and he also came into the field. So if you look at the website of Bastia, they tell you, oh, Zimaco played twice for France when he was the Bastia. It was during this soft American tournament when he was ready to move and join Saint-Etienne. Then there is a game that we don't talk too often because it's not an official game. They play against a team of Atlético Mineiro,
Yes.
of Ronaldo, and they lost, in fact. France lost 3-1. The goal was scored by Marius Trésor, which is a central defender. What is interesting in this game is Henri Zambelli play, and it's the only time that he will ever play for France, but this is not an official game. So officially, he has never played for France, even if he did play against Atlético Mineiro. He's kind of an unlucky person because he was a good player. I like him quite a lot, but whenever he joined a team, for some reason, the team was going down to second division 4 times. Marseille, Nice, Lyon, and Rennes. There was a game against USSR of Oleg Blokhin, the Golden Ball winner of 75. It was 0-0. I don't remember well this game. So it was a good year for friendly games. And, you know, if you beat West Germany, if you tie in Maracana, if you tie in Argentina, that will become world champion 1 year later. And if you tie against USSR that has Oleg Blokhin as player, you begin to believe that you can do great things with this French team.
We have to again point out that this was France's first World Cup in 12 years. What changes had Hidalgo implemented that had failed France in the previous decade?
Kovacs had some good players, but I will say that there were 2 very young players that were excellent, like Platini and Bossis. For me, Bossis is the best left defender that France ever had, and Platini is the best player ever for the French national team. They were also surrounded by some experienced players like Marius Trésor and Henri Michel. They were players from Saint-Etienne and Nantes who brought the experience, and Michel Hidalgo was not afraid to call young players. And even against, as I told you, 3 young players from Metz against West Germany. That's quite amazing. It will not be the first time that he tried incredible things there. He was also recalling some players that were not called for a long time, like Giresse and Dalger. And the atmosphere he created within the French team by being humble and fair helped a lot.
How was France's form in the preparation friendlies in the year 1978 ahead of the World Cup? Now, this included that important tie against Italy at Naples, as well as an epic win over Brazil in Paris in April.
It's a great memory. So Italy, France in Napoli, 2-2. But France was trailing 2-0 at the 22 minutes. 2 goals from Graziani, who formed with Pulici in
Gemelli
Torino.
del Gol, yes.
Yeah,
Torino.
exactly. The twin goals. Really phenomenal two players before Mancini and Vialli together. And then Batney score, own goal at 50 minutes. And then there's a free kick at 63 minutes for France. And Platini scored, but the referee said, no, you haven't waited for my whistle. So the goal was disallowed, but he scored, it was disallowed. And then at the 88th minute, another free kick, and Platini scored again. The goalie is Dinosov, one of the best ever. So Platini during that game had scored 2 goals, 2 free kicks against Dinosov, and this is
And two
when
different corners, by the way.
yeah, so absolutely amazing. The guy was so gifted with free kicks. And it is when Italy begin to say, who is this French guy with an Italian family name? We need to watch this guy. So this was good. It's also a game that Albert Gemmerich played for the first time from Strasbourg. Then there's a France-Portugal 2-0 win with Baronkeli and Berdol scoring. And then there is this France-Brazil in April 1st, 1978. And Brazil is phenomenal. I mean, people were really waiting to see that game. If you look at the midfield of Brazil, Rivellino, 1970 World Cup winner, Zico, the white Pelé, it was nickname, and Dichu. Incredible midfield. And France won 1-0 at the 86th minute with a goal of Michel Platini. It's the first win of France against Brazil ever. Once again, several players from Nantes there, Bertrand de Man, Rio, Bossis, Henri Michel was the captain, and Bruno Baronkeli and Loic Amis. So it's a fantastic win. Then there was, before the World Cup, France played against Iran and won 2-1. It's the last selection for Kerizore that we mentioned. You will say, okay, Iran is probably not a good team. That's not true, because during the 1978 World Cup, they drew against Scotland 1-1, and because of this draw, Scotland didn't qualify to the second round because Scotland beat Netherlands 3-2 in a fantastic game with a fantastic goal from Archie Gemmill. But because of his draw in Iran, they tie with a number of goals, the number of points with Netherlands, and Netherlands went up and went to play the final of the 78 World Cup. There's a French-Tunisia just before the World Cup, 2-0, goal of Platini and d'Alger. Tunisia is also a good team. There is Tarek Diab, who is the best African player in 77. And during that World Cup, Tunisia went to beat Mexico 3-1, and it was the first win of an African team in World Cup. So a good, very good impression before the World Cup. Optimism was running. Oh, we can do something.
There was much political discussions ahead of this World Cup due to Argentina being governed by a military junta led by General Videla. And in many European nations, including France, there were debates and calls to boycott the World Cup. Do you remember these discussions at the time?
Really a little bit. When I tried to look over this point, I saw that France was very active, in fact, for that. And there was a committee called COBA, Comité pour le boycott de l'Argentine, l'organisation pour l'Argentine de la Coupe du Monde de football. It was made by militants from France, but also from Argentina. It was created in June 1977, and they have some posters, and it was written, for example, no football between concentration camps. But in fact, when you look at it, only the far left political parties in France called for that boycott. Even communist parties didn't say too much. For the players also, there were not too much things. We heard that Osvaldo Piazza from Argentina, its true reason not to join the Argentina team was to boycott his government. We don't know if it was true because there was an accident, a car accident that involved his family. People also thought that Johan Cruyff was not going to the World Cup because he wanted to boycott, but he told 30 years later that it was not because of that. It was because someone wanted to kidnap his family in Barcelona. On the French national team, only Rocheteau was really pushing to boycott. He also asked, can we wear black armband to support the Argentinian people and to call against the Argentinian regime. But the team was not ready to follow. For example, Platini said something interesting, I will say. He said, we have been preparing this for 4 years. It has been 12 years since we last participated. Some people are asking us not to go. That's not right, is it? I'll swim to Buenos Aires if I have to. So there was always this debate. What happens? Do you mix sports and politics? When very bad things happen, what do you do? I mean, to these days, it's still a constant debate. I don't know what to say too much about that.
On May 23rd, 1978, Michel Hidalgo, along with his wife, was the victim of an attempted kidnapping while driving from Saint-Savin to Bordeaux. What is known about this incident?
So what he was supposed to do is to drive his car from Saint-Savin to Bordeaux, a big city close to that. Then take the train from Bordeaux to Paris, and then take a plane, it was the Concorde, from Paris to Buenos Aires. But, as you say, there were some people who follow him by car and stop the car, and they wanted probably to kidnap him. But in fact, he was strong and he disarmed one of his attackers, and they all were fleeing. But Michel Hidalgo went to the police and to the gendarmerie and basically filed a complaint, and he handed the weapon, and the weapon was not loaded. But Koba say it's not us. So this is what we know about this incident.
Much like Saint-Etienne in the previous seasons, Bastia that season would have a magnificent run in Europe and reach the UEFA Cup final, losing to Dutch side PSV Eindhoven. How significant was that run in Europe as we get nearer to the World Cup?
This, in my mind, is the Cinderella story of soccer. Bastia is a very small city in Corsica. They first play against Sporting Portugal. There were Jordao and there were Salif Keita from Mali. The first game was in Bastia, and when the Sporting players came, they say, oh, you have a nice training field, when they saw the field, but where is your true field? And they said, no, this is our true field for Yanni. Bastia won barely, and then we thought, oh, they are going to be eliminated in Portugal, and they qualified, and they won. Then it's time to play Newcastle, and they win in Bastia, but say, okay, we are going to be eliminated probably in Newcastle, because not a single French team up to this point has ever won a European game in England. Bastia did it. Then it's Torino. Torino, Graziani, Pulucci, Zaccarelli, fantastic team, and they won both games again. So it's a, whoa, what's going on? Then it's Carles Siena in Bastia, 7-2. A win of 7-2 in Bastia there. Then they lost 4-2, but they are qualified to the semi-final. It's Grasshopper Zurich, they lost 3-2, and then it's the return game, the semi-final. A lot of people wanted it to be in Paris or Marseille because the Floriani Stadium is very tiny. Normally it's 3,000 people, but for that game it was 12,000 people or 13,000 there. I still don't know how they managed. And Bastia won 1-0 thanks to the emblematic player Claude Papy. And very humble player, and he say, it's nice, I'm the one who scored, but it could have been anyone from this beautiful team. And he say, I hope we are going to play the first leg of the European final in Bastia. I don't want to play elsewhere than away from my Corsican country. So it was 0-0 in Bastia in final against PSV Eindhoven, but very bad weather, it was raining. I think the game should have been cancelled or postponed because the ball could not really run. There was too much mud. And then they lost 3-0 in Eindhoven. That was a fantastic team with the brothers Van der Kerkhoff, Van der Kulen, Van Weberen. So it was an incredible run. And this made French people say, wow, we have a good national team. We have even some teams like Saint-Etienne in 76 or even Bastia who goes to the final of the European competition. This gives us some hopes that we can win something or we can go far in any competition now.
So let's look at the final 22 selected for this World Cup by Michel Hidalgo. As goalkeepers, let's bear in mind, Andre Ray at some point looked like he would be the starter, but he broke his arm in training after Patrick Battiston, I think, took a hard shot.
Mm.
From that moment on, yeah, his international career was over. So for this World Cup, we have at number one, Dominique Baratelli of Nice. At number 21, Jean-Paul Bertrand Demont of Nantes. And at number 22, Dominique Dropsy of Strasbourg. As defenders, at number 2, Patrick Battiston of Metz. Number 3, Maxime Bossis of Nantes. Number 4, Gérard Janvion of Saint-Étienne. Number 5, François Bracci of Olympique Marseille. Number 6, Christian Lopez of Saint-Étienne. Number 7, Patrice Rio of Nantes. And number 8, Marius Trésor of Olympique Marseille. Midfielders. Number 9, Dominique Battenet of Saint-Étienne. Number 10, Jean-Marc Guillou of Nice. Number 11, captain of the team, Henri Michel of Nantes. Number 12, Claude Papy of Bastia. Number 13, Jean Petit of Monaco. And number 15, Michel Platini of Nancy. For strikers, at number 14, we have Marc Berdol of Olympique Marseille. Number 16, Christian Dalger of Monaco. Number 17, Bernard Lacombe of Olympique Lyonnais. Number 18, Dominique Rocheteau of Saint-Étienne. At number 19, Didier Six of Lens. And at number 20, Olivier Rouet of Nancy. France were in a group with the hosts Argentina, as well as Italy and Hungary. Ahead of the match against Italy in this World Cup, there was a controversy regarding the bonuses to be paid by their kit manufacturers, Adidas. Can you shed light on this?
Also, to come back to the team that you mentioned that was selected, so you see 4 players from Nantes, 4 from Saint-Etienne. So you see Nantes is also very important. There, 3 from Marseille, 2 from Monaco. Andre Ray was a pity that he broke his finger before, because he was already, for example, playing against West Germany for the first time in 77. There is no Alain Giresse, who was not selected. There is no Kerry Zoré, and only 1 player from Bastia, even despite the fact they played the final. But I think the selection was fair. It was the best players of that time. So for the controversy there was some problem with some money bonuses paid by Adidas. So what the French national team decided to do, they basically covered the 3 stripes of the Adidas shoes by putting some black shoe polish there. The sum involved was ridiculous. At that time, I think 1,500 francs. And what was bad, I will say, this shocked the public, because what was bad, come on, it's not a lot of money, and you are in a country where there is a regime that is killing people, and you're asking for money. So French people did not like that very much, and it was the first time we play for 12 years in the World Cup, and say it's not the best way to play the game. On top of that, is against Italy, which is a strong team, so you should concentrate on soccer, not on money.
Let's look at this match on June 2nd, 1978 at Mar del Plata against Italy, containing a lot of familiar names that would win the 1982 World Cup. Captain Dino Zoff, Cabrini, Gentile, Scirea, Antonioni, Tardelli, Causio, and of course Paolo Rossi, managed by Enzo Bierzot. So for France, wearing white, we have the following lineup. Jean-Paul Bertrand Demont in goal, Bossis, Janvion, Rio, Trésor, Guillou, and I'm sorry, I think I made an error. I said Henri Michel was the captain. I think Marius Trésor was the captain for the World Cup, if I'm not mistaken. But I could be wrong.
I think so.
Yeah, so that was my mistake when I was reading the main
I'm not
lineup.
Completely sure. Yeah, I'm not completely sure. Yeah.
So Trésor, Guillou, Henri Michel, Platini, Dalger, Lacombe. He'd replaced by Berdol in the 72nd minute. Six, and he'd replaced by Rouillet in the 76th minute. And for Dalger, this was his 6th and final cap. His first cap had been 1974, as well as Guillou. This was his final cap as well, his 19th and final cap. His first cap had been in 1974 as well. France took the lead after 31 seconds which was the quickest goal in this World Cup. So Didier Six has the ball on the left side. He advances, and it's a brilliant move how he burns the defender who's trying to cover him. He just kicks it and just runs, sprints. And he crosses from the left side, and Bernard Lacombe heads it in. So France has an early lead. However, France were disappointing on that day, and the defense would be criticized for many errors during this match. And Italy would tie the match in the 29th minute when Cauzio's header had struck the bar. It came back. It struck Cauzio again, and the rebound fell for Paolo Rossi, who struck it in, and the match was tied. Early in the second half, in the 52nd minute, Claudio Gentile's cross from the right side was knocked in by Renato Zaccarelli, who had come in as a substitute in the second half. Italy won this match 2-1, but I think the Adidas controversy plus the weak performance by the defense was France's undoing for this match.
Yes, I mean, as you say, it started so well. 31 seconds, a goal. First time we played the World Cup since 1966. It was a dream to start the game like that. And I think Bernard Lacombe received a gift, like a golden watch or something, to have scored so quickly. And then we lost 2-1. I remember also that a yellow card was given to Platini because he was trying to get a penalty towards the end, which is quite unusual for him to get a yellow card for that. So a disappointment. It was a disappointment there. But Italy will finish fourth of that World Cup. They had a very good World Cup. And the third game, they won against Argentina in Argentina 1-0. They finished first of that group in front of Argentina. It was a very solid team. And as you said, 4 years later, they will be a world champion. So disappointment for sure, because we were expecting more. And this controversy with Adidas was annoying. So, disappointment, I will say. But understandable when you look from almost 50 years later on.
The next match was on June 6th against the host Argentina at Buenos Aires at El Monumental. This is the Argentina team that would win the World Cup. And you have a lot of the familiar names. Filol, Passarella, Ardiles, Gallego, Mario Kempes, Luque, Alberto Tarantini, future Bastia, future Toulouse player. So a very good team. So this match would be controversial given Argentina's opener. The performance in this match was better than the previous match, but getting to this first goal, in the 45th minute, just before the halftime, Marius Trezor, he slipped, and as he was falling, his hand touched the ball. And the referee awarded a penalty kick. In many nations, even then, I don't think it would have been called. But there was a belief that the referee may have been under pressure because of the host Argentina, etc., etc. But the penalty was awarded, and Daniel Passarella scored for Argentina. In the second half, in the 60th minute, Bernard Lacombe had an attempt. He lobbed the ball. It struck the bar, and Platini scored from the rebound. And the match was tied. But Argentina would score the winner in the 73rd minute when, from the middle, Ardiles passed to Luque, who from outside of the box, he lifted the ball and struck a volley and scored Argentina's winner. France's goalkeeper, Jean-Paul Bertrand at this point had been substituted after he was injured when he struck the post trying to save an attempt from Jose Valencia. But reading through the France lineup, we have Bertrand in goal, who'd replaced by Baratelli in the 58th minute. We have Battiston, Bossis, Lopez, Trezor, Batney, Henri Michel, Platini, Lacombe, Rocheteau, and Six. Like I said, it was a much better performance, but France lost again and were officially eliminated from the World Cup.
Yes, so as you say, this goal of penalty kick by Passarella is still controversial. Mario Cesar was on the ground, touched the ball went to his hand, and they called penalty. If it would have been a 1-1, as it should have been with most of the referees, it's interesting to realize that based on the result of the third game, it is France who will have qualified in place of Argentina. because of the number of points and the number of goals. And Argentina would have been eliminated, so we could not have become a world champion. So this penalty has a huge consequence. So it was a good performance for France, a disappointment to lose again, especially on that penalty. What is interesting is what Michel Hidalgo did. So how do you rebound for disappointing defeat against Italy? He did four, among the lineup you indicated, there were four big changes with respect to the first games against Italy. But Jovian was replaced by Battisto. Guillou was replaced by Batne. Rio by Lopez and Dagier by Rocheteau. So out of the four players, three were from Saint-Etienne, who had the experience of very tough games in European competitions. So I don't know if he did that because they were from Saint-Etienne, but these players were very strong. So disappointment, because after two games, France is eliminated, but they play better the second game, and perhaps it's some experience to gain for the next competition.
The last inconsequential match was on June 10th against another already eliminated squad, Hungary, who also had lost their first two matches. So this match was on June 10th at Mar del Plata. And both teams arrived at the stadium, both with their white kit. Can you describe this farce and what happened afterwards?
Yes, so it was really a farce, as you say. So France was eliminated, and we say, okay, let's keep only one jersey. Let's the blue already jersey go back to France. They arrive, white jersey, Hungarian team, white jersey, and we cannot play that. What was interesting is people do not say that too much, but the Hungarian team had a second jersey, and it was red. The problem is that the goalkeeper of the Hungarian team had a red jersey, and he was the one say, I don't want to change. If we play red, I will have to change another color, but I don't want to do that. So what's going to happen? So France organizer were trying to look for other jerseys. So they drove around there and they found a small team from fishermen there who had a jersey which was white and green. And this is how France play with white.
Club Atletico Kimberley. Yeah.
Kimberley. Absolutely amazing. And France won 3-1. And, people were thinking, oh, perhaps we should play with this jersey. Perhaps it's a good luck jersey. But it was the first time ever and the only time that France play with that. They won 3-1. So it was good. And they play the subs. All the people that didn't play.
We should mention that this caused like a 45-minute delay. And the match referee, the Brazilian Arnaldo Coelho, he even threatened France with a forfeit for not having the proper kit. And like you said, France were already eliminated, and a lot of the players who had not played in the tournament or played in this match. So for France, we have the following lineup: Dominique Dropsy in goal, making his international debut. Janvion, Bracci, Lopez, Trésor, Batne, Papi. He'd replaced by Michel Platini in the 46th minute. Jean Petit, Berdol, Rocheteau. He'd replaced by Six in the 75th minute, and Rouillère. Now, as far as the match itself, France took the lead in the 22nd minute when Christian Lopez scored with a long-range shot from outside of the box. They doubled the lead in the 37th minute when Janvion's cross from the right side was knocked in by Berdol. But a few minutes later, the Hungarian Sandor Zombori scored with a long-range shot of his own after a combination play with Tibor Nilashi. Just a minute later, France scored his third goal when Olivier Rouillet's cross from the left was struck in by Dominique Rocheteau, and France won 3-1. And it was a consolation win. Like I said, both teams were already eliminated. This match, in a way, also started the tradition of fielding players in a last match in a tournament who had not participated in a competition yet. What are your thoughts on this tradition?
I like it very much. And I'm not surprised that Michel Hidalgo started it, because he was really a very kind person. So thanks to this game, all the 22 players on the roster play at least one game in this tournament.
Including all three goalkeepers.
Yes, amazing. Absolutely amazing. And as you said, Dropsy was his first game for the national team. It was the last game for Claude Papi. for the national team with that game. After that, in 1982, Michel Hidalgo did the same thing for the third place games against Poland. Henri Michel followed that tradition in 1986 to put the subs once again for the third place games against Belgium at the 1986 World Cup. And even Aimé Jacquet did that in 1998 World Cup, but it was the third game
Against
of a
Denmark,
group
yeah.
against Denmark, where everyone, where France was already qualified. I like very much this tradition, and I'm not at all surprised that it is Michel Hidalgo we thought about that.
Claude Papy, this was his third and final cap. His first cap had been 1973, and he would tragically pass away in early 1983 at the age of 36, I believe. He was very young when he passed away.
Yeah. He's a national hero in Corsica. For example, when they talk about him and they still talk about him, they do not say Claude Papy, they do not say Papy, they just say Claude. So in Corsica, if you say Claude, the first name, you are talking about Claude Papy, extremely well-beloved player.
The press reported on many controversies during the World Cup. Obviously, the players were criticized for the bonus issue. There were reports of clans and players fighting each other and stories about the team being against DDS6. And later, the group confronted the press about these stories. What do you remember about these reports?
We talk about this boycotting or trying to do something to help the Argentinian people. Dominic Rocheteau was really the one who wanted to do that. So the French team was staying in an upscale hotel, Hindu club. He called for a meeting. Only 4 people show up, including himself. I think Guillou, Battiston, Hidalgo, and some of us, like Batnen. I'm not going there. So there's already some kind of tension, perhaps. DDS6 is someone very peculiar. To be honest, I like him very much. But for me, he's a genius, but a genius in all of the sense of the word. When he play some game, it could be unbelievable. For example, he played with Lens against Lazio in 77, 6-0 for Lens, 3 goals from DDS6. He scored an incredible goal against Brazil in Maracana in 77, but also he has some very strange reaction. He was playing for Marseille during the 1979-1980 season when Marseille finished to be relegated in second division. And at the end of the season, he didn't want to play. It is Marius Rezer who had to come to his house and pick him up to come and play. It was also the time that French players didn't play abroad, very few. And DD6 play in so many foreign countries like Bruges, in
He
Belgium.
constantly changed his clubs.
My goodness. Stuttgart and Leipzig in Germany, Aston Villa in England,
Mulhouse in the second division. Yeah.
Yes, Galatasaray in Turkey even took a new name, Dundarziz, when he was Turkish there. He played, I think, for 13 different teams in 20 years. Sometimes twice for the same teams, but not at the same time. And what you say about second division is unbelievable. So at the beginning of the season, 1983-1984, it was the season just before the Euro competition in France, he joined Mulhouse, which was in second division. So people, including myself, who like him very much, say, oh my God, he's not going to be called to the national French team. Michel Hidalgo is not going to call second division player. He played so well, especially in French Cups. He eliminated Paris. They eliminated Bordeaux. And it was so amazing that he was called for the 1984 Euro. So you see, he's someone who can be extremely gifted, but also a very unique mentality. And before going to the World Cup, he even say, I want to be number 1. And people did not like that because French people usually do not like when French players think about themselves first. He also has missed an opportunity to score against Argentina, but people did not like that. They said, but we don't know if it's true, that it was hard to live with him, that he even room alone at the Hindu club. He was described by the press as being very pretentious, to think about himself, to be ambitious, individualistic. We don't know if it is true. I can just say that whenever he was playing, we didn't know what we will get. Will it be a bad play because for some reason he will not be involved? Or Will he be phenomenal because he was extremely gifted? You know, when he began to play under Michel Hidalgo, he was playing for Valenciennes, which is a very small team. Very few people from Valenciennes has ever been called to the national team, but he was so gifted that Michel Hidalgo, for his first game, as you mentioned, as a coach, called him with Platini and Bossis. Michel Hidalgo saw three young rising stars: Platini, midfield, Bossis in defense, and six as forward. And those three guys will be at the 1984 Euro, all the way with Michel Hidalgo.
Wasn't there also some concerns that their group opponents, Italy, were also in the same hotel?
They're in the same hotel, which is kind of weird these days. So they could see each other, can talk each other. So this is very strange. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's first time that France is playing a World Cup since 1966. Perhaps they are not used anymore to know what to do in European or World Cup competitions. So they had to learn. They learned the hard way during that 1978 World Cup.
So historically, was this World Cup a good experience in line for the 1982 World Cup?
I think so, in fact. When you think over, first time they play in 1966, it's a very young team, quite young, with a lot of players that are between 21 and 24. Battiston, Bossis, Rouillet, Platini, Rocheteau, Six, Jean-Vion, Battenet. So it's really the core of the team is very young. First international competition. They did pretty well against Argentina, so there is hope. I think it's a good experience to have. We'll see what the future will hold.
In closing, what was the general consensus about Michel Hidalgo after this World Cup performance? Was he in a position of strength or was he under pressure?
I think the jury was still out. We didn't know what to think. You know, we have to remember that before he took over, it was a disaster. Before between 1960 and 1975, he succeeded to qualify a French team for the World Cup. They play well against Argentina. They should have deserved at least a tie. They won against Hungary, which was a decent team. The group was tough. Argentina world champion and Italy fourth, with playing very well during this World Cup. What we like also, we used to like in France, is not only we win, but we have to win with a good play. And this French team was very nice to watch. I know that a lot of French fans of that area, also friends from countries outside France, they like very much this team because of the way they were playing, like the French flair, champagne football, it was called sometimes, very offensive mind, try to possess the ball, very high creativity, a lot of technical skills. So we like it. We like it. I mean, for instance, this is the time that I preferred. Now, to be honest, when I see the French team playing, even if very good in terms of result, I'm almost crying because it's very bad, very bad. It's not romantic football. It's really defending and attacking. It's completely different from the mentality of Michel Hidalgo. So the jury was still out. There were some very good things. We qualify. There are a lot of very young players surrounded by Marius Trésor and Henri Michel that can help. French teams were beginning to do good in European competition. The style of play is very nice to watch. We won friendly games against Brazil, against West Germany. They were even called the best team for the friendlies in the world, like
Oh,
world
yes, the
champion
world
for
champion of
friendlies.
friendlies. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So there is hope. But in fact, this will be decided by the years to come. What is going to happen for the 1980 Euro qualification? And more important, what is going to happen for the 1982 World Cup qualification? Are we going to make it or not? If we make it, it's good. And if we make it and do well, that will be very good. If we don't make it, we come back to the 60, 75 period, and then Michel Hidalgo will be fired. So the jury was still out, a lot of promise, but we cannot tell the future.
With that, I would like to thank you for your participation in this interview. All our respective contact information is listed on the blog and podcast uploads. So, Laurent, thank you once again and hope to continue these discussions on French football history.
Yeah, very welcome, and thank you for doing this podcast. It's really super nice to do that, and I'm sure a lot of people enjoy to learn about soccer. So please, please keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you.